She stood alone in the shadowed kitchen at midnight, whispering "Happy Birthday" to a gas station cupcake, her voice cracking on words no one was meant to hear. That's when he appeared. Cristiano Kane, the man they called the Reaper. The most dangerous criminal in the city. Her boss. He stood in the doorway, watching her with eyes that had seen men beg for mercy. But when he looked at her, something shifted. "Come here," he commanded, his voice soft as a threat. Her hands trembled. 3 years she'd stayed invisible in his mansion. 3 years of silence. Safety. Now he'd seen her. And when she tried to run, when she stammered apologies and reached for the door, he did something that changed everything. He relit her candle. "Make a wish," he whispered. "This time you're not alone." What he didn't know. She was hiding a secret that could destroy them both. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you are hooked in and ready to enjoy the story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments section where you are watching from, because tomorrow I'll be giving you an interesting story such as this one and you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The kitchen was Jessica's kingdom at midnight. Not because she ruled it. No, she was far too small for that. But because it was the only place in the sprawling estate where she could breathe without holding her breath. The marble countertops gleamed under the soft glow of the single overhead light she'd left on, and the hum of the industrial refrigerator was the closest thing to a lullaby she'd heard in years. She moved through the space like a ghost. Quiet. Efficient. Unseen. That was the way she liked it. The way she needed it. Jessica had been working in Cristiano Castellano's. No, not Castellano. Cristiano Kane's mansion for 3 years, and in that time, she had perfected the art of invisibility. She cleaned the floors he walked on, prepared meals he barely tasted, and existed in the margins of a world that had no space for women like her. Black. Poor. Alone. She didn't mind. Or at least, that's what she told herself every morning when she woke in the small room off the east wing. The one with the narrow bed and the window that didn't quite close all the way. Tonight, though. Tonight was different. Jessica glanced at the clock on the wall. 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes until her birthday ended. 13 minutes until she turned 36 in the silence. Just like she had turned 35, 34, 33. She reached into the paper bag she'd tucked beneath the sink earlier that evening and pulled out a single cupcake. Vanilla. Gas station brand. The frosting was a little smashed on one side, but it was hers. From her apron pocket, she retrieved a birthday candle. Thin, blue, the kind that came in a pack of 24 for $2. She pressed it into the center of the cupcake and lit it with a match from the stove. The flame danced. Jessica stared at it, her reflection warped in the stainless steel fridge behind her. She looked tired. Older than 36. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, a few gray strands catching the light. Her uniform, a plain black dress with a white apron, hung loose on her frame. She'd lost weight. She always lost weight when she disappeared. She took a breath. And then, softly, so softly that even she could barely hear it, Jessica began to sing. "Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me." Her voice cracked on the second line. She closed her eyes. "Happy birthday, dear Jessica. Happy birthday to me." She didn't make a wish. There was no point. Wishes were for people who believed in something bigger than survival. She blew out the candle. The smoke curled upward, vanishing into the dark. 3 floors above, in an office that overlooked the city like a throne room, Cristiano Kane sat in silence. He didn't sleep much anymore. Sleep required surrender, and Cristiano had spent the last 20 years of his life refusing to surrender to anything. Grief, fear, or the gnawing ache that lived in his chest like a second heartbeat. The man they called the Reaper in whispered conversations was dressed in black even now, past midnight. his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his sleeves rolled to his forearms. A tumbler of whiskey sat untouched on his desk. He stared at it the way some men stared at photographs of the dead. He was 39. Controlled. Untouchable. And so unbearably lonely that he had forgotten what it felt like to want anything at all. The house was silent. It was always silent. 50 rooms, 20 staff members during the day, and at night, just him and the ghosts of the men he'd killed, the deals he'd made, the version of himself he'd buried so deep he wasn't sure it existed anymore. He rose from his chair, restless. His footsteps echoed as he moved through the hallway, past rooms he never entered, down the staircase with the crystal chandelier that caught the moonlight and split it into 1,000 pieces. He wasn't looking for anything. But then he heard it. A voice. Small. Fragile. Singing. Cristiano stopped. His hand hovered over the banister. He tilted his head, listening. The sound was coming from below. From the kitchen. He descended slowly, his Italian leather shoes making no sound against the marble. When he reached the doorway, he paused in the shadows. And there she was. The maid. The one who never looked him in the eye. The one who moved like water, never disturbing a single thing. She stood at the counter, her back to him, a single candle flickering on a sad little cupcake. She was singing to herself. Alone. Something in Cristiano's chest, something he thought had died long ago, tightened. He watched as she blew out the candle. Watched as her shoulders sagged. Just slightly. Watched as she stood there, staring at the smoke like it carried every year she'd spent unseen. Cristiano stepped into the light. "Bring her to me," he said quietly to the air. But there was no one else there. So he said it again, this time directly to her. "Come here." Jessica's entire body went rigid. The cupcake slipped from her fingers, hitting the counter with a soft thud. She turned. And for the first time in 3 years, Cristiano Kane saw her. Have you ever felt invisible in a room full of people? Drop a comment and tell me about a time someone finally saw you. For real. Jessica couldn't breathe. Her hands flew to her apron, smoothing it down in a gesture that had become automatic over the years. An attempt to make herself smaller, neater, less of an inconvenience. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she was certain he could hear it. Cristiano Kane stood in the doorway like a shadow given form. Tall. Broad-shouldered. His presence filled the kitchen in a way that made the spacious room feel suddenly suffocating. His dark eyes, almost black in the dim light, were fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. She'd seen him before, of course. Hundreds of times. But always from a distance. Always in passing. She made it a point never to be in a room with him alone, never to linger where his gaze might land. Now there was nowhere to hide. "I'm sorry, Mr. Kane," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean to disturb you. I was just, I'll clean this up and I told you to come here." His voice was low, steady. Not loud, but it carried the weight of someone who had never had to repeat himself. Jessica's legs felt like water, but she moved. 1 step. 2. She kept her eyes on the floor, on his shoes, expensive, polished to a mirror shine. She stopped 3 feet away from him, close enough to obey, far enough to feel safe. The silence stretched between them like a tightrope. "Look at me." Her breath hitched. Slowly, painfully, Jessica raised her eyes. Past his chest. Past his jaw. Until she met his gaze. And something in the world shifted. His eyes weren't cold. That's what shocked her most. She'd expected ice. The same detached indifference she'd seen him wear like armor when he moved through the house. But up close, in the quiet of the kitchen, there was something else there. Something raw. Almost human. Cristiano studied her face as if he were trying to solve a puzzle. His brow furrowed slightly. How long have you worked here? 3 years, sir. 3 years, he repeated, almost to himself. He took a step closer. Jessica fought the urge to step back. And I've never heard you speak more than 2 words. Her voice faltered. I try not to get in the way. In the way. He said it like he was tasting the words, testing them. Is that what you think you are? Jessica didn't answer. Couldn't. Because yes, that's exactly what she thought. What she knew. People like her didn't belong in houses like this, in lives like his. She was a ghost. A service. A function. Cristiano's jaw tightened. He glanced past her at the counter, at the sad little cupcake with its extinguished candle, the wisp of smoke still curling in the air. It's your birthday. It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. And you were celebrating. Alone. In my kitchen. At midnight. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. His voice cracked like a whip, sharp enough to make her flinch. He saw it, the way her body recoiled, and something flickered across his face. Regret, maybe. Or recognition. He exhaled slowly, dragging a hand through his dark hair. I'm not angry. Jessica blinked. That might have been the most surprising thing he could have said. Cristiano moved past her, toward the counter. He picked up the cupcake, turning it in his hands like it was something precious, something fragile. How old are you? 36. He nodded slowly. Then, without warning, he set the cupcake down and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a lighter, silver, engraved with initials she couldn't read in the dim light, and relit the candle. The flame sprang to life. Jessica stared at it, then at him, confusion and something dangerously close to hope warring in her chest. Make a wish, Cristiano said quietly. She shook her head. I already blew it out. So do it again. His eyes found hers, and for a moment, the ruthless Mafia boss who ruled half the city with an iron fist looked almost gentle. This time you're not alone. The words hit her like a punch to the sternum. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, hot and unwelcome. She tried to blink them away, tried to swallow the knot forming in her throat, but it was too late. Cristiano saw. When's the last time someone sang "Happy Birthday" to you? He asked softly. Jessica's voice came out broken, barely a whisper. My daughter. 12 years ago. The air left the room. Cristiano went very still. You have a daughter. Had. The word tasted like ash. She died. She was 4. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. And then Cristiano did something that shattered every assumption Jessica had ever made about him. He reached out, slowly, carefully, as if approaching a wounded animal, and gently took her hand. His palm was warm, rough with calluses, but his touch was impossibly tender. I'm sorry, he said, and the brokenness in his voice matched her own. Jessica looked down at their joined hands, hers small and dark against his, scarred and worn from years of cleaning, scrubbing, serving. His large and pale, marked with different scars, the kind that came from violence. 2 people who had no business touching. 2 people who understood loss. Blow out your candle, Cristiano whispered. And this time, wish for something impossible. So she did. She closed her eyes, the warmth of his hand anchoring her to the moment, and she wished for the one thing she'd stopped believing in years ago. To be seen. To be known. To matter. She blew out the flame. And when she opened her eyes, Cristiano was still there. Still holding her hand. Still looking at her like she was the only person in the world. Jessica pulled her hand back as if she'd been burned. The spell broke. Reality crashed back in like cold water. She stumbled backward, her hip catching the edge of the counter, and the cupcake toppled onto its side, forgotten. I need to go, she stammered, wrapping her arms around herself. It's late. I shouldn't be here. You shouldn't. Shouldn't what? Cristiano's voice had cooled, the vulnerability from moments ago sealed away behind familiar walls. But his eyes tracked her every movement, sharp and assessing. This. She gestured helplessly between them. Whatever this is. It's not. I work for you. That's all. That's all, he repeated flatly. Yes. The word came out too quickly, too desperate. Jessica forced herself to meet his gaze one more time, to rebuild the armor she'd spent 3 years perfecting. I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable, Mr. Kane. It won't happen again. I'll make sure to keep my personal matters out of your home. Something dangerous flashed in Cristiano's eyes. My home. You've lived here for 3 years, and you still call it my home. Because it is. And where's yours? The question landed like a blade between her ribs. Jessica's throat tightened. She didn't have an answer. Not one she could speak aloud. Home was a memory. A grave in a cemetery she couldn't afford to visit. A little girl's laugh that existed only in dreams. I have a room, she said finally. That's enough. Cristiano stepped closer, and this time Jessica did back away, her spine pressing against the refrigerator. But he didn't advance further. He simply stood there, watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Frustration mixed with something that looked almost like pain. You're afraid of me. I'm not. Don't lie. His voice was quiet, but it cut through her protest like glass. Everyone's afraid of me. I'm used to it. But you. He trailed off, jaw working as if wrestling with words that refused to come. A minute ago you weren't. Jessica's hands trembled. She clasped them together, digging her nails into her palms. A minute ago was a mistake. Was it? Yes. She forced steel into her voice, the same steel that had gotten her through losing everything and still waking up each morning. You don't know me, Mr. Kane. And I don't know you. What happened just now, that was grief recognizing grief. Nothing more. Nothing more, he echoed, and there was something bitter in the way he said it. Silence stretched between them, thick with everything they weren't saying. Jessica could hear her own heartbeat, could smell the faint scent of his cologne, something dark and expensive that probably cost more than she made in a month. She needed to leave. Nah. Before something inside her cracked open completely. I'll clean up and go, she said, moving to step around him. His hand shot out, not grabbing, just there. A barrier. Wait. Mr. Kane. Cristiano. The word came out rough, almost angry. If we're going to pretend nothing happened, at least stop calling me Mr. Kane like I'm a stranger. You are a stranger. Am I? He turned to face her fully, and the raw intensity in his expression made her breath catch. Tell me, Jessica, do you let strangers see you cry? Her name. He'd said her name. She didn't even know he knew her name. How do you? I know everyone who works in my house. His voice softened slightly. I know you start your shift at 6 in the morning. I know you take your break in the garden behind the east wing because you think no one notices. I know you read books on the library window seat when you think I'm away on business. He paused, something almost vulnerable crossing his features. I know you sing sometimes when you work. Quietly. Like you're trying not to disturb the air. Jessica felt the walls closing in. This was worse than being invisible. This was being seen in a way that left her nowhere to hide. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why would you notice any of that? Cristiano was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because I stopped sleeping 2 years ago. And you were the only peaceful thing in this entire goddamn house. The confession hung between them like something sacred and terrifying. Jessica shook her head, tears threatening again. Don't do this. Please. Whatever you think this is. I don't know what this is, Cristiano interrupted, and for the first time since she'd met him, he sounded lost. I came down here because I heard someone singing, and for reasons I don't understand, I couldn't walk away. That's all I know. Then you should have. Her voice broke. You should have walked away. Why? Because men like you don't see women like me. Not really. And when you do, she stopped, swallowing hard. When you do, it only ends one way. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed quickly by something that looked like anger, but not at her. You think I would hurt you. I think you're dangerous. I am. He didn't deny it. Couldn't. But not to you. You don't know that. Yes, he said with absolute certainty. I do. Jessica wanted to argue, wanted to run, wanted to rebuild the safe distance that had protected her for 3 years. But exhaustion weighed on her like chains, the exhaustion of being invisible, of being alone, of carrying grief no one else could see. I can't do this, she whispered. Whatever this is, I can't. Cristiano nodded slowly, stepping back to give her space. The loss of his proximity felt like cold wind. Then go. She moved toward the door, her legs unsteady. But before she could leave, his voice stopped her one last time. Jessica. She paused, not turning around. Happy birthday. The kindness in those 2 words nearly broke her. She fled. Jessica didn't sleep that night. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment in the kitchen until the words lost meaning and all that remained was the memory of his hand holding hers. Warm. Steady. Impossibly gentle. By the time dawn broke, she'd convinced herself it was a fever dream. An aberration. By Monday he would forget. By Monday, she would be invisible again. She clung to that hope like a lifeline. But when she entered the kitchen at 6 a.m., there was an envelope on the counter. Cream-colored. Expensive. Her name written across the front in bold, masculine handwriting. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a note, brief, direct, and a key. The library is yours between 2 to 4 p.m. daily. No one will disturb you. DK. Jessica pressed her fingers to her lips, unsure whether to laugh or cry. He was giving her space. Permission to exist in his home as more than a shadow. It was a kindness she didn't know how to accept. She tucked the note into her apron pocket and tried to focus on her work. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. At noon, the head of household, Mrs. Kate, a stern woman in her 60s who ran the staff with military precision, found Jessica in the hallway. Mr. Kane needs you in his office. Now. Jessica's stomach dropped. Did I do something wrong? He didn't say. Just go. Mrs. Kate's expression was unreadable, but there was something in her eyes. Curiosity, maybe, or concern. Jessica climbed the stairs on legs that felt like lead. She'd never been to his office. The 3rd floor was his domain. Private, forbidden. Staff didn't go there unless summoned, and staff were never summoned. Until now. She knocked softly on the heavy oak door. Come in. Cristiano sat behind a massive desk, papers scattered before him, a phone pressed to his ear. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression shifted, softened, just slightly. He held up one finger. Wait. Jessica stood by the door, hands clasped, barely breathing. I don't care what he thinks he's owed, Cristiano said into the phone, his voice cold and cutting. Tell Ferraro if he wants to renegotiate, he can do it through his lawyer. I'm done playing games. He paused, listening. No. End of discussion. He hung up without saying goodbye. The silence that followed was deafening. Cristiano stood, buttoning his suit jacket, charcoal today, perfectly tailored. He moved around the desk, and Jessica's pulse quickened with each step. You got my note, he said. Yes. Thank you. You didn't have to. I wanted to. He stopped a few feet away, maintaining careful distance. But that's not why I called you up here. Jessica's throat tightened. Is something wrong? That depends. He studied her face, his dark eyes searching. I have a problem. And I think you might be the only person who can help me solve it. Me. She couldn't hide the disbelief in her voice. Cristiano gestured to a leather sofa by the window. Sit. Please. It wasn't a request. Not really. But his tone was gentle, nothing like the ice-cold voice he'd used on the phone moments ago. Jessica sat, perched on the edge of the cushion like a bird ready to flee. Cristiano took the chair across from her, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. It struck her how tired he looked up close, shadows under his eyes, a tightness around his mouth that spoke of sleepless nights and burdens too heavy to share. I'm hosting a dinner tomorrow night, he began. 7 guests. Business associates and their wives. High stakes. The kind of evening where appearances matter. Jessica nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. My cook quit yesterday. Called this morning, said she's not coming back. Something about her daughter in Seattle needing her. He paused. The agency can't send a replacement until Wednesday. Understanding dawned cold and sharp. You need someone to cook. I need you to cook. Mr. Kane. Cristiano, he corrected quietly. I'm a maid. I clean. I've never cooked for something like that. These people, they're used to. She gestured helplessly. I can't. You can. His certainty was absolute. Mrs. Kate showed me your file when I asked. Before you came here you worked in restaurants. 3 different ones over 5 years. Jessica's cheeks burned. That was a long time ago. And those were diners, not. I don't need Michelin stars, Cristiano interrupted. I need someone who can make food that doesn't taste like cardboard. Someone who can do it without falling apart under pressure. His eyes held hers. I trust you. Those 3 words landed like stones in still water. You don't even know me, she whispered. Don't I? Something flickered in his expression. Vulnerability, quickly masked. You've been in my house for 3 years. You move through these rooms like you're trying not to leave fingerprints, like you think taking up space is a crime. But I've watched you, Jessica. The way you arrange flowers in the foyer even though no one asked you to. The way you fix the books in the library so the spines line up perfectly. The care you put into things no one else notices. He leaned closer. That's who you are. Someone who gives a damn even when no one's watching. That's exactly who I need tomorrow night. Jessica's vision blurred. She blinked hard, refusing to cry again in front of this man who seemed to see straight through every wall she'd built. What if I fail? You won't. But if I do, then I'll handle it. His voice was steel-wrapped in silk. But you won't be doing this alone. I'll be in that kitchen with you. Every step. She stared at him. You're going to help me cook? A ghost of a smile touched his lips, the first she'd ever seen. It transformed his face, made him look younger, almost boyish. I can follow instructions. And I make excellent coffee. Despite everything, the fear, the confusion, the weight of his attention, Jessica felt her own lips twitch. "This is insane," she murmured. "Probably." Cristiano stood, extending his hand. Not demanding. Offering. "But I'm asking anyway. Will you help me?" Jessica looked at his hand. Looked at his face. Saw something there that terrified and compelled her in equal measure. She thought about running. About saying no. About protecting herself the way she'd learned to do. But then she thought about the candle. The way he'd relit it. The way he'd held her hand like it mattered. To be seen. To be known. To matter. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll do it." His fingers closed around hers, warm and sure. "Thank you," Cristiano said softly. And for the first time in 12 years, Jessica felt like maybe, just maybe, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The next evening arrived too quickly. By 5 p.m., the kitchen had transformed into a war zone. Pots simmered on every burner. The oven hummed with roasting vegetables. Jessica's hands moved with practiced efficiency, chopping, stirring, tasting, but her mind was a hurricane of doubt. Cristiano had been true to his word. He stood at the counter beside her, sleeves rolled to his elbows, tie discarded, following her instructions with surprising focus. He'd already burned 1 pan of garlic, too high heat, she'd said gently, but he hadn't complained. Just started over. "How's the risotto?" Jessica asked, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. Cristiano stirred the pot carefully. His brow furrowed in concentration. "Creamy, I think." She moved beside him, peering into the pot. Their shoulders brushed. She tried not to notice how solid he felt, how the scent of his cologne mixed with butter and wine created something unexpectedly intoxicating. "Add more stock." Slowly. She demonstrated, and he mimicked her movement. "Good. You're a quick learner." "I'm motivated." His voice was low, meant only for her. "Good teacher." Jessica's cheeks warmed. She turned away, focusing on the lamb. "Your guests arrive in an hour. You should go get ready." "Not yet." "Cristiano, tell me about your daughter." The wooden spoon clattered from her hand, hitting the stovetop. Jessica froze, every muscle in her body going rigid. "I shouldn't have," Cristiano began, but she cut him off. "Why?" Her voice was barely audible. "Why would you ask me that?" He set down his own spoon, turning to face her fully. "Because you've been carrying her alone for 12 years. And because He stopped, jaw tightening. "I lost someone too. Someone small. Someone I couldn't save." The air left Jessica's lungs. Cristiano's eyes were distant now, looking at something she couldn't see. "Her name was Isabella. My niece. She was 6. His voice cracked on the number. "My sister's daughter. 15 years ago there was a hit. Rival family. They were trying to send a message, and He stopped, swallowing hard. "They didn't care who got caught in the crossfire." "Oh God," Jessica whispered. "My sister never recovered. She's in a facility upstate now. Catatonic. Been there for a decade." Cristiano's hands curled into fists at his sides. "I built this empire on the graves of the men who took Isabella from us. I thought it would help. Thought revenge would fill the hole." He looked at Jessica, and his eyes were raw. "It didn't." Silence filled the kitchen, heavy with shared grief. Jessica's hands trembled as she reached up and slowly pulled the chain from beneath her uniform. A small silver locket dangled from it. She opened it with shaking fingers and held it out to him. Inside was a photo, a little girl with braids and a gap-toothed smile, her eyes bright with joy. Zara, Jessica said softly. She loved butterflies. Used to chase them in the park for hours. A tear slipped down her cheek. She had leukemia. We caught it too late. No insurance. No money for the treatment she needed. Her voice broke. I worked 3 jobs. Sold everything. Begged everyone. It wasn't enough. Nothing was ever enough. Cristiano stared at the photo, and something in his expression shattered. How old? 4.5. God. The word came out like a prayer. Like a curse. He looked up at Jessica, and there were tears in his eyes. Actual tears on the face of a man who made grown men beg for mercy. I'm so sorry. She died holding my hand, Jessica continued, the words spilling out like water through a broken dam. Her last words were, "Don't be sad, Mama." 4 years old, dying, and she was trying to comfort me. She pressed her palm to her chest, where the ache lived. I failed her. I was her mother and I couldn't. Don't. Cristiano's hands were on her shoulders, firm but gentle. Don't do that. Don't blame yourself for a system that was designed to fail people like you. For a world that values money over lives. But I should have. There was nothing you could have done, he said fiercely. Nothing. You loved her. You fought for her. That's all any parent can do. His grip tightened. And she knew. Zara knew you loved her. That's why her last thought was for your happiness. Children don't do that unless they've been loved completely. Jessica broke. She collapsed against his chest, and Cristiano's arms came around her immediately, holding her while she sobbed great, heaving cries she'd kept locked inside for years. He didn't shush her. Didn't tell her to calm down. He just held her, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other pressed against her spine. I've got you, he murmured into her hair. I've got you. They stood like that for minutes or hours. Jessica couldn't tell. Time seemed to suspend in the kitchen, in the circle of his arms, in the shared weight of their grief. When she finally pulled back, her face was wet, her eyes swollen. She must have looked like a disaster. But when she met Cristiano's gaze, there was no judgment there. Only understanding. I'm sorry, she whispered. Your dinner. To hell with the dinner. His thumbs brushed away her tears with devastating gentleness. This matters more. The guests can wait. He cupped her face in his hands, and the tenderness in the gesture nearly undid her again. You matter more. Before Jessica could respond, before she could process what those words meant, the kitchen door swung open. Mrs. Kate stood in the doorway, her eyes widening at the scene before her. Cristiano holding the maid, both of them tear-stained, the dinner half-finished behind them. Mr. Kane, Mrs. Kate said carefully. Your guests have arrived early. They're asking for you. The spell broke. Cristiano's hands dropped. He stepped back, his expression shifting, the vulnerability closing up, the armor sliding back into place. But before he turned away, he looked at Jessica one more time. We're not done, he said quietly. A promise. A vow. Then he was gone, striding from the kitchen with the confidence of a man who owned the world. Jessica stood alone in the center of the kitchen, her heart pounding, her locket still clutched in her fist. Mrs. Kate approached slowly. Are you all right, dear? Jessica looked at the older woman, then at the half-prepared dinner, then at the doorway where Cristiano had disappeared. I don't know, she admitted. But for the first time in 12 years, she felt something other than numb. She felt alive. Grief has a way of connecting us in unexpected ways. Have you ever met someone who understood your pain without words? Share your story below. The dinner was a success. Jessica had pulled herself together with shaking hands and finished the meal. Herb-crusted lamb, creamy risotto, roasted vegetables that glistened with olive oil and sea salt. Mrs. Kate had served it while Jessica hid in the kitchen, listening to the muffled sounds of conversation and laughter from the dining room. She'd expected Cristiano to stay with his guests all evening. Expected the moment they'd share to dissolve like smoke. But at 10:30, long after the guests had left, he returned to the kitchen. Jessica was elbow-deep in soapy water, scrubbing the last of the pots. She didn't hear him enter. Didn't know he was there until his voice, soft and tired, broke the silence. "Leave it." She spun around, water dripping from her hands. Cristiano stood in the doorway, jacket off, tie loosened, looking more exhausted than she'd ever seen him. "I'm almost done," she said. "I don't care." He crossed the kitchen and gently took the pot from her hands, setting it in the sink. Then he grabbed a dish towel and began drying her hands himself, his touch careful, almost reverent. "You did enough. More than enough. The dinner went well?" A tired smile tugged at his lips. "They asked for your name. Wanted to know where I'd been hiding such a talented chef." He finished drying her hands and set the towel aside. "I told them you were worth more than all of them combined." Jessica's breath caught. "You didn't." "I did." His eyes found hers. "Because it's true." She didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to hold the weight of his regard without breaking under it. Cristiano seemed to sense her overwhelm. He glanced at the kitchen window, where moonlight spilled across the floor in silver pools. "Come with me. There's something I want to show you." "It's late. Please." The single word, spoken so softly, dismantled every protest she had. She nodded. He led her through the house, past the grand room she cleaned but never inhabited, up a narrow staircase she'd never noticed, to a door at the end of a quiet hallway. He unlocked it and pushed it open, gesturing for her to enter first. Jessica stepped inside and gasped. It was a rooftop garden. Small, intimate, hidden from the world below. String lights hung overhead, casting everything in warm golden light. Flowers bloomed in ceramic pots, roses, lavender, jasmine. A small bench sat in the center, surrounded by green. "I didn't know this was here," she whispered. "No one does." Cristiano closed the door behind them. "I built it 5 years ago. After my sister. When the house started feeling like a tomb, I needed somewhere that felt alive." He moved to the bench and sat, patting the space beside him. "This is where I come when I can't breathe." Jessica sat, leaving a careful distance between them. The night air was cool, fragrant with jasmine. Above them, stars pierced the darkness. Small miracles she'd forgotten to look for. "Thank you," Cristiano said quietly. "For tonight. For trusting me. For—" He stopped searching for words. "For letting me see you. You keep saying that." Jessica turned to face him. "Like I had a choice." "You did. You always did." His expression was earnest. "You could have stayed invisible. Could have kept those walls up. But you didn't. And I know how much courage that takes." Jessica looked down at her hands, rough, scarred from years of work. "I've spent so long trying not to need anyone. Trying not to want anything. It's safer that way." "Safer," Cristiano echoed. "But lonelier." "Yes." The admission hurt. "So much lonelier." "I know." He shifted closer, closing the distance she'd maintained. "I've been alone for 15 years, Jessica. Surrounded by people, soldiers, associates, staff, and completely alone. I convinced myself it was necessary. That connection was weakness." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. "Then I heard you singing to yourself in my kitchen, and something in me just broke open." Jessica stared at their joined hands. I'm scared. Of me. Of this. She gestured between them. Of what happens when the spell breaks and you remember who you are. Who I am. Cristiano's jaw tightened. And who are we, Jessica? You're Cristiano Kane. You could have anyone. Any woman in this city would. I don't want anyone in this city. His voice was fierce now, urgent. I want the woman who sings to flowers when she thinks no one's listening. Who reads poetry on rainy afternoons. Who loved her daughter so completely that 12 years later, she still carries her picture over her heart. He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent electricity racing through her veins. I want you. Tears spilled down Jessica's cheeks. I don't know how to do this. How to let someone in. I'm so broken, Cristiano. So full of sharp edges. Then we'll be broken together. He cupped her face, his thumb catching her tears. I'm not asking you to be whole. I'm not asking you to be anything other than exactly who you are. His forehead touched hers, and his voice dropped to a whisper. I'm just asking you to let me stay. To let me see you. That's all. Jessica closed her eyes, breathing him in, cologne and wine and something uniquely him. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to protect herself, to rebuild the walls. But she was so tired of walls. Okay, she whispered against his lips. Stay. Cristiano pulled back just enough to look at her, and the emotion in his eyes nearly stopped her heart. Yeah. A watery laugh escaped her. But I'm terrible at this. At letting people close. I'll probably push you away 100 times before. Then I'll come back 101. He smiled, a real smile, bright and boyish and devastating. I'm not going anywhere, Jessica. Not unless you tell me to. And even then I might argue. She laughed, and it felt like the first real laugh she'd had in years. You're ridiculous. I'm persistent. He stood, pulling her up with him. Dance with me. There's no music. There's always music. He pulled out his phone, tapped a few buttons, and soft jazz filled the garden. A saxophone crooning something slow and sweet. Cristiano held out his hand. May I? Jessica hesitated for only a heartbeat before placing her hand in his. He pulled her close, one hand on her waist, the other cradling hers against his chest. They swayed slowly under the stars, surrounded by flowers and light and the kind of peace that comes from being truly seen. This is crazy, Jessica murmured against his shoulder. The best things usually are. Cristiano's lips brushed her temple. Thank you. For what? For being brave enough to blow out that candle twice. Jessica smiled, something warm and fragile blooming in her chest. For the first time in 12 years, she let herself hope. Maybe wishes could come true after all. The next 2 weeks felt like living in a dream. Cristiano found excuses to be wherever Jessica was. He'd appear in the library during her reading hours, sitting quietly across from her with his own book. He'd wander into the kitchen while she prepared meals, stealing tastes and making her laugh with his terrible cooking jokes. At night, they'd meet in the rooftop garden, talking until dawn painted the sky pink. They were careful. Discreet. The staff noticed. Of course they noticed, but no one dared speak it aloud. Mrs. Kate watched with knowing eyes but said nothing, though Jessica caught her smiling more than once. Cristiano gave Jessica a key to the garden. Bought her books without asking, leaving them on her nightstand with little notes tucked inside. Started asking her opinion on things that mattered, business decisions, renovation plans, which charity his foundation should support next. He was letting her into his life, piece by careful piece. And Jessica, terrified and exhilarated in equal measure, was letting him into hers. But the world Cristiano inhabited was never far from the surface. It shattered on a Tuesday afternoon. Jessica was in the garden, reading, when she heard raised voices from inside. She stood, heart racing, and moved to the door. Through the glass, she could see Cristiano in the hallway below, facing 3 men in dark suits. Their body language was aggressive, territorial. "You're getting soft, Kane," one of them snarled. "Word on the street is you're distracted. Vulnerable." Cristiano's voice was ice. "Watch your mouth, Ferraro. Or what? You'll have me killed?" The old Cristiano would have already put a bullet in my head for showing up here uninvited. Ferraro stepped closer. "But you're not that man anymore, are you? Got yourself a little pet project. A maid, I hear. Someone's making you weak." Jessica's blood turned to ice. Cristiano moved so fast she almost missed it. He had Ferraro slammed against the wall, forearm pressed to his throat. "You don't talk about her. You don't think about her. She doesn't exist in your world. Understand?" "Too late," Ferraro choked out, grinning despite the pressure on his windpipe. "Everyone knows. And they're wondering what she's worth to you. How much you'd pay to keep her safe." Cristiano's face went white. He released Ferraro, who stumbled back, rubbing his throat. "You have 24 hours to get out of my city. If I see you again, there won't be a conversation." "This isn't over," Ferraro spat, then gestured to his men. They left, but the threat hung in the air like poison. Jessica backed away from the door, her entire body shaking. She'd known. Of course she'd known what Cristiano was. But hearing it spoken aloud, seeing the violence in him surface so easily, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. And worse, she'd made him vulnerable. Made him a target. She was still standing frozen when Cristiano found her 10 minutes later. "Jessica." Relief flooded his face. "I didn't know you were up here." "Did you?" He stopped, reading her expression. "You heard." She nodded, unable to speak. Cristiano approached slowly, hands raised like he was approaching something wild and frightened. "It's handled. Ferraro is nothing. He's angry because I rejected a deal that would have made him rich and gotten people killed. He's lashing out. He knows about me." Her voice came out small, broken. "They all know. And now I'm a weakness. A liability." "No." "Yes." Tears streamed down her face. "You heard him, Cristiano. They'll use me to get to you. And you almost killed him. Right there in your hallway. That's who you are. That's the world you live in. That's not all I am." His voice cracked. "You know that. You've seen." "I've seen what I wanted to see," Jessica interrupted, wrapping her arms around herself. "A man who was kind to me. Who made me feel seen. But that doesn't change reality. You're dangerous. Cristiano. Your life is dangerous. And I can't." Her voice broke completely. "I can't lose someone else. I can't bury another person I love." The word hung between them like a confession. Love. Cristiano's eyes went wide. "Jessica." "No." She stepped back, shaking her head. "This was a mistake. All of it. I never should have let you in. Never should have believed." She couldn't finish. The pain was too sharp, too immediate. "Don't do this." Cristiano's voice was desperate now, all his armor stripped away. "Please. We can figure this out. I'll increase security. I'll keep you safe. You can't promise that." Jessica looked at him, really looked at him, memorizing his face because she knew this was the end. "No one can. And I won't be the reason you get hurt. Won't be the weapon someone uses against you." "You're not a weapon," Cristiano said fiercely. "You're the only good thing in my life. The only real thing. Then let me go." The words tasted like ash. "If you care about me at all, let me disappear before someone uses me to destroy you." Cristiano looked like she'd shot him. "You're asking me to choose between you and keeping you safe. I'm telling you there's no choice." Jessica moved to the door, every step agony. "I'll leave tonight. Quietly. You'll find another maid. And in a few weeks, you'll forget." "I will never forget you." The rawness in his voice stopped her. "You walked into my kitchen and sang yourself happy birthday, and you changed everything. You made me remember what it feels like to be human, to want something other than revenge and power. I can't just—" His voice broke. "I can't just let you walk away." Jessica turned, tears blurring her vision. "You have to." She left him standing in the garden, surrounded by flowers and string lights and the shattered pieces of something that could have been beautiful. 3 days passed. Jessica had moved to a shelter on the east side, a small room with a single bed and a window that overlooked an alley. She'd left Cristiano's house with nothing but her clothes and Zara's locket. Mrs. Kate had cried when Jessica told her, had tried to convince her to stay, to talk to Cristiano. But Jessica had been resolute. This was the only way to keep him safe. The only way to keep herself from shattering completely when the inevitable happened. She found work at a diner 2 blocks away. The pay was terrible, the hours long, but it was familiar. Safe. Anonymous. She told herself she'd done the right thing. She told herself the ache in her chest would fade. She was lying. Every morning, she woke reaching for him. Every night, she dreamed of the garden, of dancing under stars, of his hands cradling her face like she was something precious. She'd left to protect him. But she was dying anyway. On the 4th night, there was a knock at her door. Jessica's heart leaped, irrational hope flaring bright. But when she opened it, it wasn't Cristiano. It was Mrs. Kate. "May I come in, dear?" Jessica stepped aside, confused. The older woman entered, taking in the sparse room with sad eyes. "He's not eating," Mrs. Kate said without preamble. "Hasn't slept. He sits in that garden every night until dawn, just waiting. Like you might come back." Jessica's throat tightened. "He'll move on. Will he?" Mrs. Kate turned to face her. "I've worked for Cristiano Kane for 12 years. I've seen him cold, ruthless, untouchable. But I've never seen him broken. Not until you left." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "He asked me to give you this. Said he'd respect your choice either way, but you deserve to know the truth." Jessica took the envelope with shaking hands. Mrs. Kate moved to the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, I've never seen him love anyone the way he loves you. And I've never seen you as alive as you were these past 2 weeks." She smiled sadly. "Fear is loud, dear. But love, real love, is worth shouting back." Then she was gone. Jessica stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside was a letter, pages of Cristiano's bold handwriting, and a photograph. She looked at the photo first and gasped. It was her. In the garden. Laughing at something off camera, her face tilted toward the sun, completely unguarded. She looked happy, radiant, alive. With trembling fingers, she unfolded the letter. "Jessica, I've started this letter 20 times. Burned 19 drafts because nothing I write comes close to what I need to say. You think leaving protects me. That disappearing keeps me safe. But you're wrong. Ferraro is gone. I didn't kill him. I'm trying to be better for you. But I made it clear that touching you would be the last thing he ever did. Every associate, every rival, Every person in my world now knows. You are untouchable. Protected. Mine. Not because you're a weakness. Because you're my strength. Before you, I was a ghost. Going through motions, building empires I didn't care about, punishing people who deserved it and some who didn't. I was good at it. But I was hollow. Then I heard you singing, and something in me woke up. You didn't see the Reaper. You didn't see the monster everyone else sees. You saw Cristiano. Just Cristiano. The man I'd forgotten existed. You asked me once what I wanted. I want mornings where you steal the first sip of my coffee. I want to watch you read on rainy afternoons. I want to hear you sing, not to yourself in the dark, but to me in the light, where you know you're heard. I want to take you to the cemetery where your daughter rests and hold your hand while you tell her about the man who loves her mother. I want to build a life where you never have to make yourself small again. I know I'm dangerous. I know my world is violent and complicated and unfair. But I'm working to change it, to be someone worthy of the way you look at me, like I'm more than my worst deeds. You don't have to come back. If you're truly happier without me, I'll respect that. But if you're running because you're scared, of me, of this, of hoping, then come home. The garden is waiting. I'm waiting. I will wait forever if that's what it takes. Yours, Cristiano. Jessica read the letter 3 times, tears falling onto the pages, smudging ink. Come home. She looked around the small room, the cracked walls, the thin mattress, the window that showed only darkness. This wasn't home. It had never been home. Home was string lights and jasmine. Home was rough hands holding hers with impossible gentleness. Home was a man who had looked at her brokenness and said, "Let me stay." Jessica pressed the letter to her chest, over Zara's locket, and made her choice. She grabbed her coat and ran. The mansion was dark when Jessica arrived, breathless from running. The gate opened automatically. He'd never removed her access, and she moved through the silent house like a prayer. The garden door was unlocked. She pushed it open and stepped into golden light. Cristiano was there, sitting on the bench, head in his hands. He looked up at the sound of her footsteps, and the hope that flooded his face nearly brought her to her knees. Jessica! He stood slowly, like he was afraid she was a mirage that might vanish. You're here. I'm here, she whispered. You got my letter. I got it. She moved closer, each step deliberate. And you were right. I was running. Not from you, from hope. From the possibility that something good could actually last. Cristiano's hands clenched at his sides, like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for her. And now I'm choosing hope. Jessica closed the distance between them, looking up into his face. This beautiful broken man who had somehow found her in the dark. I'm choosing you. If you'll still have me. If I'll. Cristiano laughed, the sound choked with emotion. His hands came up to frame her face, thumbs brushing away her tears. Jessica, I have been yours since the moment you blew out that candle. There is no if. There's only always. I'm still scared, she admitted. So am I. He rested his forehead against hers. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. Jessica smiled through her tears. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. I'm just getting started. Cristiano pulled back slightly, and his expression grew serious. I meant what I wrote. I want a life with you. A real one. And I know I can't erase my past, but I'm building a different future. One where you never have to hide. Where we can. She kissed him, rose up on her toes and pressed her lips to his, cutting off his words, pouring 12 years of loneliness and 2 weeks of longing into the touch. Cristiano froze for half a heartbeat. Then his arms came around her, pulling her close, kissing her back with a gentleness that made her soul ache. It was tender and desperate and perfect. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Cristiano touched his forehead to hers again. "Move in with me," he whispered. "Not as staff. As mine. Let me give you the life you deserve." "I don't need a mansion," Jessica said softly. "I just need you. You have me. Completely. Irrevocably." He kissed her again, softer this time. "But I'm still giving you the mansion. And the library. And every morning for the rest of our lives." Jessica laughed. A real full laugh that felt like sunlight after years of rain. "You're ridiculous. I'm in love." He smiled against her lips. "There's a difference. Say it again." "I love you, Jessica." He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in his world. "I love your strength and your softness. I love the way you sing when you think no one's listening. I love that you saw past the monster to the man underneath. I love you. I love you too," she whispered into his chest. "God help me, I love you too." They stood there under the string lights, surrounded by flowers and stars, two broken people choosing to heal together. "Dance with me?" Cristiano asked softly. Jessica smiled. "Always." He pulled out his phone, and that same jazz saxophone filled the garden. They swayed together, closer this time, no space between them. "Jessica," Cristiano murmured after a while. Happy birthday." She pulled back, confused. "My birthday was 2 weeks ago." "I know." His eyes were bright with emotion. "But today's the day you came back. The day you chose to live instead of just survive. That's worth celebrating." Tears spilled down her cheeks again, but this time they were tears of joy. "Make a wish," Cristiano whispered. Jessica looked at him, at this impossible man who had heard her singing alone in the dark and decided she was worth walking toward, and realized she didn't need to. Her wish had already come true. "I don't need to," she said, smiling through her tears. "I have everything I want right here." Cristiano kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. And in that moment, surrounded by light and love and the fragrance of jasmine, Jessica finally understood. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was home. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let ourselves be loved. What's one moment when you chose hope over fear? Share your story. You never know who needs to hear it today. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.